In the span of just a few days, our entire society has become panic-stricken and consumed with fear. We check and recheck social media and news feeds, even though the information is almost always nothing new. And supermarket lines are out the door, people are stockpiling. And as for the markets last week, well, we saw a literal crash that the likes of which hasn't been seen since 1987. It's not news to me that Americans are anxious, but it is really novel to see how vulnerable we are to toxic levels of fear. Psychological science has identified a very clear root of such extreme responses. When people cannot tolerate situations that are uncontrollable or unpredictable, they are going to feel anxious. Indeed, we can't control or predict what's going to happen with COVID-19, and a lot of people are really struggling because of it. So we are at a critical juncture from an emotional and behavioral perspective. We can pretend that things were once certain and controllable, like last week, and we can try to just deal with the immediate issue, or we can step back and we can recognize that certainty is not something that we ever had, and it's not something that we need. The reality is that we have been vulnerable to a viral outbreak for decades. In fact, we're actually vulnerable to even more significant issues like nuclear terrorism, hostile military invasions, declines in the national food supply, mass currency devaluations, radiation due to astronomical events. It's actually miraculous that crises like this don't happen more often. And ironically, once we accept that reality, that we don't have control and we don't have certainty ever, once we understand and appreciate our vulnerability, we emerge with greater strength to be able to face this crisis and any crisis. The current issue that we are facing is calling upon us to accept that there are limits to what we can control and what we can know. The nature of being a human is that we're not invincible and we're not impervious to risk, even in this wonderful age in which we live. We have to practice humility and accept and make peace with that simple fact. Practically speaking, these days, I am encouraging my patients, and there are more of them than there ever have been, to envision very clearly what it would be like for them to get infected with COVID-19. It's not a pleasant thing to think about, but getting to a place of acceptance and mental preparedness is far more psychologically adaptive than trying to avoid a possibility that we might not be able to control. It might seem hard to stay sane when so much is unknown and so much is out of our control, but I actually think COVID-19 presents an amazing opportunity for our society. The current crisis is calling upon us to recognize and embrace the fact that nothing was ever certain, nothing was ever clear, and nothing ever will be. Human beings actually don't need to control or always know what's going to be next. All we need to do is to be in the moment, to do what we have to do today, and to accept our relatively small position in this world. And once we do that, then we'll have the inner strength to face this crisis and anything else that comes our way.